Hello, upper school. Today we are going to be doing a lesson on shading. And shading is making things lighter or darker depending on where the light in the picture is coming from, and that's going to make your pictures look more realistic. Since we did Vincent van Gogh last week, what we're going to do is we're going to think about how he creates his shading and shadows in his pictures and the lines he uses. He uses really thick, expressive lines. So we're going to be making a fall picture. We're going to be using pumpkins, and I'm going to show you how to create shading so that it looks a little bit more realistic. And you can use this trick in your other pictures or your paintings or whatever artwork you're creating. All right, so first things first, we are going to make our pumpkins. To make your pumpkin, what you're going to do is you're going to draw your one pumpkin in the center of your picture. And remember, pumpkins aren't perfect circles, not like a basketball. They grow in nature, and nothing in nature is perfectly straight or perfectly circular. So in the middle of my picture, I'm just going to draw kind of an oval shape. And it's not going to be a perfect circle, so don't worry about making it perfect. Okay, and I want to do a collection of 3 pumpkins, maybe in different sizes. So I'm going to add another pumpkin over here, maybe a little bit smaller. And again, making the lines kind of wobbly, not a perfect circle. And then maybe next to this center pumpkin, I want to add another one, but I want it to be behind the first pumpkin right here. So to show that it's behind it, I'm going to draw part of the pumpkin, but before completing the whole circle, I'm going to have it stop when it touches this pumpkin. Same thing over here. And that's going to create some overlapping. It looks like that. This shape right here, the center pumpkin, is on top of this shape, and that's called overlapping. An artist uses overlapping to show where things are in the picture, to give the picture depth. Some items are forward and some are behind or back in the distance. And that's all part of the perspective we talked about before as well. All right, so you don't want your pumpkins floating around. So you're gonna need another line in your picture, kind of like a horizon line. If these pumpkins were outside, you would have a horizon line. Or even if they were sitting on a table or on the ground next to a building, or if they were inside, on the floor by a wall. You don't want your pumpkins just floating around. So you're gonna add a line. So we're just gonna call it a horizon line because these pumpkins are gonna be outside. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna draw a line in the middle of my paper. It's gonna go across. When it hits this pumpkin, I'm gonna stop because you don't want your lines going through your pumpkins, because you want the pumpkins to be in front of that line. And there's a little bit of space here, so I'm going to pick up my line right here and then go across, okay, like this. So now my pumpkins are grounded. It looks like they're sitting on something, whether it's the ground, a table, or the floor. I'm going to create a light source in my picture too. You don't always have to do that, but that's going to help us decide where the shadows are going to be and where the darks in the picture are going to be and where the lights are going to be in the picture, okay? So this is going to be my sun right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my yellow marker and I'm going to draw a yellow circle. And that's going to be like our sun, or maybe it's the lamp or the light coming in through the window, but that's our light source. All right, so now we're going to be adding some color. You can do lighting and shading with black and white pictures and paintings, but we were going to make it color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a thing called scribble coloring in. Not a very professional term, but we're going to use scribbling to color in our pictures. If you don't like to scribble so much and you just want to use lines, or if you want to color things in totally like traditionally by just starting on one side and going across, you could do that too, and just filling the whole shape in. But I think if you're using the scribble technique, it's going to help you create the shadows and the highlights on your pumpkins, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start with a light orange. So I have some different shades. So I've got a darker one, a light one. I'm also gonna have a yellow to add maybe some highlights, but I'm gonna start with my middle orange. And if you only have one orange, whether it's a marker or a crayon or a colored pencil, that's okay too. All right, so what I'm gonna do is inside my pumpkins, I'm going to start scribbling. And the scribbling is going to color in the pumpkins, but also give the picture or the drawing texture. and movement. And artists use all types of lines inside their artwork to give the illusion of movement or texture. So I'm just gonna go through and I'm keeping my scribbles kind of small. And I'm just going around and I'm filling in my pumpkin. It's actually pretty fun and it's relaxing too, because you're not worried about making it perfect. And I went outside the line a little bit, that's okay too. Okay, and then I will also do this pumpkin over here. Right now they look like oranges, we will turn them into pumpkins in a minute. If you were just making oranges, like a bunch of oranges like in a bowl, you would use the same technique as well. Okay, so I have my middle shade of orange here. So if I want to create shadows, I'm going to use a darker orange. I'm not using black, I'm not using gray. You could, but if you want it to look more realistic, just use a darker shade. So when you're doing this, you want to look at your light. If my light is coming like this and shining on my pumpkins, like that, you have to think of where the shadows would be and where the highlights would be. So highlights are where the light is hitting the pumpkins, and the shadow is that space further away from the light where it's in the shadow. So since the light is over here, the shadows on the pumpkins are gonna be on this side because there's nothing coming from this side. So lighter over on these sides of the pumpkins, and then darker on these sides. So on the opposite side, I'm gonna do some scribbles with my darker orange. And notice I'm just kind of following this curve like this, and then when I get to the middle, I stop. So as I'm getting closer to that light source or the sun, I'm stopping. And same thing over here. Okay. And then if you want to blend these colors a little bit more, you could use another shade of orange, maybe a little bit similar, and just kind of fill it in so it's not such a big change, that you have a little bit of darkness inside your pumpkins. Or should I say color variation? Okay. And if you feel like that's not dark enough, you can go in and add more scribbles. And I'm using a thicker marker here because maybe those thick lines will show up a little bit better. Just kind of have to experiment and play with it. All right. Cool. All right, so now I'm gonna make the ground, and I'm just gonna use brown. I'm gonna start with a light color brown, and then I can go back in with a darker to make the shadows. So I'm just gonna go in between my pumpkins. I'm using little scribbles. And you can see that these lines are kind of looking very similar to the lines Vincent van Gogh used in his Starry Night. Of course, he used paint, but he used really thick lines of paint. And these scribbles look similar to that. So you have the look of a Vincent van Gogh painting, but you're using markers or pencils or colored pencils, crayons. So I'm just taking my time and making those scribbles. And do you notice if your scribbles are really close together, it looks darker. So if your lines are really close together and your scribbles are really tight, it's gonna make a shadow. So I'm just going around right here around this pumpkin, and I'm just keeping the lines really close together, and that's creating a shadow. So artists can create shadows by keeping the lines really close together. And then lighter, the further the lines are spaced apart. So you're creating shadows with different colors, or different shades of colors, I should say, and with line. Some advanced stuff, guys. Very stress relieving. Okay. And then again, if I wanted to add shadows for this pumpkin, I have the shadows here. And look, see, my shadows are the opposite of where the light is coming from. So if I'm doing it for this one, over on this side of the pumpkin, and then a little bit over here, but maybe underneath. And notice making those lines really close, and it's gonna make it look like it's getting darker and it's creating that shadow. Very cool. And then maybe I want to take a darker brown and just kind of mix it with the lighter one, just to give a little bit more depth and color variation. And you can tell that's already looking better. And again, if you want to use the darker to go around, you can, to make those shadows. Remember, they're close together. And it's also a darker shade, so it's really going to add to those shadows. Cool. All right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the stems for the pumpkins, because to me right now they just look like oranges, like different sized oranges. So I'm going to add the stems. And pumpkins grow on vines. Out in like they have fields of pumpkins, so they grow, and they grow in a vine, kind of like watermelons or cantaloupe or any kinds of melons like that. But they're attached to the vine with a stem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add lines that stick up. This is going to help them make them appear more pumpkin-like. So just some lines that stick up, and sometimes the lines have a curly cue from where it attaches to the vine. So I'm just going to add some. So I'll have maybe one facing this way, another one facing this way, and maybe this one facing that way too. If you want to do the texture of the pumpkin, the creases, because they have those lines in them, you can take a darker orange and you can actually make scribble lines to make those lines. Or you could draw the lines, whatever you feel more comfortable doing. And if you don't think that's dark enough, you can draw the lines. So let me see how that looks. Oh, I like that too. So it's really your preference, but it's gonna give it more of that texture of the pumpkin, or that bumpy texture. Awesome. All right, now what I'm gonna do is maybe I wanna add a little bit of green, because these are outside. So I'll just do some green scribbles around here. Maybe some over here. Maybe these are still out in the field waiting to get picked. And then to draw some trees in the background, I'm just gonna do scribbles that kind of go up and then come back down. And I'm gonna keep those scribbles really tight and close together so that it looks darker. And you could use this technique if you were making apples. So if you wanted to draw some apples, you could do the exact same thing with scribbles, just using red or green or whatever color apples they are. And then since it is fall, I'm gonna add some more orange into those trees. Looks really good. I like that. You could leave the sky white, or if you wanted to go in and add color, you could do blue, but I'm going to keep it kind of simple, just so the shading of the pumpkins really stands out and the lines from the scribbles stand out. And I think we are done. So that's how you create shadow and shading with different shades of colors, and by keeping lines really close together with those scribbles. So the closer the lines are, the darker it's going to appear. And the further the lines are, the scribbles are away from each other, the lighter it's going to appear. So you can try that out in your other pictures. In the future, we can talk about stippling and cross-hatching, just another way that artists use lines to create shadows and highlights. And we can talk about that next time. But I think that's good for now. I'm really excited to see what you guys come up with. If you ever want to add some apples into this or some other type of fall produce, you could do that. But this is looking really good. I cannot wait to see what you guys come up with. Thank you for joining me. See you soon. Bye.